Hey everyone, Brian Allen representing ASIS and Guidelines and Standards ESRM project, actually representing ASIS from a global standpoint. I got my Birkenstocks on. So, quick update, we're about 80% done. We've been having a lot of meetings, group meetings, individuals, a lot of trying to understand what ESRM is so that we can put this in a format for the S&G group to build a guideline and standard. First, why, right? I think the number one purpose I think we're trying to do is codify this, make it a real thing. So that there's consistency and definition, so that we've got some authority to be able to talk to it and get representation with everybody. What we've done is we've defined the purpose, the mission, what it is ESRM is at its very highest of levels. Two, a little bit of application, but I'm going to get into that in a second and why we're not going fully deep into application. So we're doing a deep dive mostly into what are ESRM, like what is ESRM? What are the risk principles? So basically the 5 core concepts. You're going to see that it is very high level. There's a lot of reasons for that. I think number one, when we started to dive into some of the application and tactics of it, it became more exclusive, even though the intent was to be inclusive with ideas. That became problematic for us, because as we started being inclusive and saying, well, it would apply to this and would apply to this, as much as that intention was good, what we started to see was we were actually excluding a lot of things, and so it would leave openings for individuals to say, well, you didn't cover my area, or maybe this isn't holistic the way that we want it to be perceived. So when you see the document, and again, we're about 80% done, we brought a tech writer in to help us start writing all the content that we put together through interviews, through one-on-ones, through edits that people have made and sent their comments in. We're probably a couple weeks out, maybe 2 to 3, for getting something out for everybody to take a look at and weigh in. We also addressed 2 fundamental concepts: transparency, so the ability to and the necessity for risks to be transparent through an organization, and governance, which is the fundamental, the core role of, how do you apply ESRM and what everyone's role is. What's the role of asset owners and stakeholders, and what's the role of the practitioners, the people that are trying to apply it. There are 2 areas that we didn't get into that I think a good next step will be, and looking for your input on this, is we didn't touch the differences between ESRM and ERM, and it's a really big question. It's kind of fundamental in this conversation. It needs to be addressed, but I don't think it needs to be addressed in a guideline or standard, but we can discuss that later. I think first of all, we wanted to make sure we had a solid draft of a guideline so that the S&G group can take this guideline and take the draft of a guideline and turn it into a full-fledged guideline and eventually a standard, hopefully after that in 2019 or 20. The conversation of ERM and ESRM, we've started to dive in. There's a tremendous amount of nuance to there. There's a tremendous amount of conversation. It starts to get somewhat confusing if we're not exactly right, but we're not sure it belongs in a guideline in the first place. And the second one is convergence. A big topic, obviously. There's applicability here. We need to touch on it at some point, so we're thinking maybe it's some addendums that we add to this conversation, some talking points, maybe a white paper. The group that's putting this together, we're happy to take that on and put some thoughts around that. But I think first things first, we needed a guideline. This is a draft of a guideline to hand off to S&G. The simplicity is important, I think, mostly so that we can stay on the same page, we can talk to it in its most simplistic terms. There was a lot of conversation when we started to go down into some of the tactical elements of ESRM. So how do you do it? How do you apply it? It would be applied here. This is what This is how you would find risk. This is how you find asset owners. This is how you find stakeholders. Once we started doing that, one, it becomes very long, and again, it becomes exclusive, and I think we really needed to stay away from that. So what you will see in a short period of time is this guideline, the draft of a guideline, I'll call it, it's simple, and it's intentionally made that way. So curious about your feedback when it comes out. We're looking forward to get it out to everybody. Again, we're getting close. The writer's going to be probably finishing. If we don't get it by the end of the day today, my guess is over the weekend. At that point, we'll have a semi-final draft that's going to go out to the rest of our group to be able to make final comments on it. We're getting close. I think just one other quick comment that we recently made some pretty big changes to this, and it was when we first drafted this. It started out as a step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. And it's really not built around steps. It's really built around a thought process. And the thought process with the paradigm, the ESRM risk paradigm, can really happen in any direction. So it would be misleading to walk people through a step. And so we had to make some pretty fundamental changes recently to the document. But they weren't big because the content, the working group had all the content together. That's been put in a really good format. I think you're going to like it. We're looking forward to your feedback. So looking forward to it. And getting it out to you guys. Enjoy the weekend.